Hey guys, back again here in the home studio. I've done a bad job of keeping up with these Kellerman vlogs. I'm actually 3 books ahead reading from where I am filming. Just had some other stuff I had to get done first. And since high on my priorities list for this week, I had 2 sessions to cut down here. So I just finished doing that. Please remind me to turn the organ off when I'm done with this vlog. I don't want to leave it on. That would be good for the organ. I don't know if you can even see it. It's over that way, which is weird because the camera is reversed. Anyhow, so, Kellerman vlogs. As you know, if you follow this series on YouTube or on Facebook, I reread Jonathan Kellerman's Alex Delaware series as well as other books that take place in that same universe. This is just my kind of decompression. It's the same thing as rewatching The Office, which I know is very popular. This season, my wife and I have been rewatching Christmas movies. We have seen Muppet Christmas Carol, not A Christmas Story, It's a Wonderful Life, Elf, and what's the new one that I like? Klaus. More times than we can think to count. Just rewatching and rereading is just very helpful to me, relaxing and decompressing and getting rid of anxiety. And I love the Kellerman universe. I love the characters that he writes and the imagery that he creates. And so it's a good book series for that. It's heavy, but it's not too heavy. It's intellectual, but it's not too intellectual. Somewhere between light reading and heavy reading. Closer to light, probably. That said, when you are invested with a series or a universe or a work of art, you often have certain things that you don't get or bother you or questions or whatever, and that's what these discussions are. They're not reviews for people that haven't read the books yet. These are for other people that have read the books and want to talk about details that either bother them or they don't understand or whatever the case may be. So let's get to it. So we're at Private Eyes, which is one of my favorites. I know I say that a lot. I will give a brief synopsis just in case anybody is listening who has not read the book, even though I don't advise that. And yes, there will be spoilers. So in the last book, our friend Detective Milo Sturgis was not kicked off the force. He was put on unpaid leave. So whatever you call that. It's not expelled, but suspended, I guess. And our other friend Alex Delaware is a child psychologist, and this book starts with one of his patients that he sees through the normal channels of being a child psychologist. And then she comes back and checks in with him 10 years later, I think, or thereabouts, 9-10 years later, which is fairly common, I guess, in the world of child psychology, that the patients will come back right around the time they become an adult just to check in. And but it's complicated because this patient has a mother who's a rich agoraphobic and who had been attacked and badly disfigured the last time she left the house. And now the main character, Melissa, wants to go away to school, but she's worried about leaving her mother behind. And while we're there, the mother, who hasn't left the house in a million years, disappears. And so we're trying to figure out what happened to her. Is she dead? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Etc. And since Milo is not actively working, he becomes a private investigator for this particular case, and they hire him as well. So, like I said, I like this book. I know I say that a lot. I think this is the start of an era of Kellerman books that I think are really good. They represent a lot of character development for Alex and Milo. He writes great characters. This particular one is a unique story. It fills in a lot about Alex, as well as kind of moves Milo forward. So one of the other things I like about this book, and I'm not trying to get too much into it, if you've read the book, you know, and if you haven't read the book, you'll find out, that Kellerman, over the course of this book, villainized conversion therapy. And this book was written in late 80s, early 90s, came out in 91, I think, I'm going from memory. And so, if you got to think about it, our last vice president, right before our current one, was a vocal advocate of conversion therapy. So that it's not like it's a thing that's like everybody acknowledges is bad. It's one of those things that, like, doctors and psychologists and, mental health professionals and advocates are saying, no, this is equivalent to torture. And then there are still people, zealots and, religious bigots and things of that nature who say, no, this is a good thing. In this book that's over 30 years old, conversion therapy is already seen like a criminal act. If you don't know what conversion therapy is, it's essentially, and I'm going to kind of overstate it, torturing someone in hopes of making them not gay. So, anyhow, so this book, the villains in the book use conversion therapy on several gay characters in the book, and the book makes them the villain for it, which is great. And Alex also, conversion therapy comes up several times over the course of these books, and Alex is always very clear about where he stands, which I appreciate. Okay, so here are my notes. I talk a lot in these vlogs about which characters are brought back and which ones should be brought back. I want Melissa to be brought back. I would love to see her reappear and check in another 10 years later, as well as her mother, Gina. So, at some point during this book, Alex has, I think, breakfast or lunch at Nate and Al. And one of the things I've talked about is how often in these books are the restaurants real? Are the places real? Are they a figment of the author's imagination, or are they real places? And finally, a place shows up that I've heard of. Although I haven't been to Nate and Al, I know that it is a real place. Okay. In this book, Rick, Milo's significant other, he gets favors from a blue-collar patient who sawed his hand. And I think that's a plot device that is used again in the future, and I'm wondering if it's the same patient or a different patient. Excuse me. I have never found the whole thing with Linda's dad believable. If you're just picking up now, Linda was Alex's girlfriend in the last book, maybe? And she has to get out of the way so Robin can come back, which is good. I think most of the Alex Delaware fans want him to be with Robin. But the way that she gets out of the picture is not believable. I think it was the last book, in Time Bomb, if I'm not mistaken, she talks about how her dad had her fiancé murdered, and she hadn't spoken to him in like 8 years. And then at the end of that book, I think it is, he shows up, and then maybe it's the beginning of this one. I'm not totally clear on the timeline, but in terms of what falls in what book. But what ultimately ends up happening is that he has heart trouble, and she goes back to take care of him. And that just doesn't ring true to me. Like, you're not gonna, he has your fiancé murdered. You don't speak to him for 8 years, and then out of the blue you drop everything to go take care of him because he's dying. Like, yeah. Anyhow. Okay, I understand that's just a plot device to get Robin back in the picture, and we need to get rid of Linda. But, and I never liked Linda in the first place. I didn't dislike her. Like, I don't have a problem with her, but I didn't feel like her and Alex were a good couple. So I get it, but it's just, Okay. Kellerman loves to describe everyone Alex encounters in vivid detail. It's one of my vivid things about the books. What did I say? Did I say favorite or vivid? I thought. It's one of my favorite things about the books. It really helps me to picture every scene. I do have a photographic memory. Not a very good one, but that's how my memory works. I remember pictures, I remember images, and I often create pictures and images when I'm reading. And so it's very helpful. But a lot of the descriptions are not flattering, and I often wonder how Alex and or Kellerman would describe me or my wife or other people in my life, because he's not, like I said, he's not always flattering with his descriptions. Okay, here's a real specific thing. There's a time in the book where Alex leaves his car, his Cadillac Seville, at Gina and Melissa's mansion, and I think Milo drops him off at home. And then at 8 a.m. he talks to Melissa on the phone and says he'll see her when he picks up his car. And then by the time it's 9-something, the book references the Seville being back home. And there's nothing that happens in between that point in the book. There's no, like, I could even accept, okay, fine, he went to go get the car and the author just didn't tell us because it wasn't that important, except he specifically said he would speak to Melissa when he got the car. He doesn't speak to Melissa. So how did he get the car? And did he call for a taxi? They didn't have Uber at this time. I mean, did he ask a ride from his neighbor? I mean, and plus, an hour is not a very long time to find a way to go pick up a car and then get all the way back. So, yeah, I never understood that. Maybe I missed something in the reading. So if I did, please let me know. There was a reference to Crotty, who's a character from Silent Partner, I believe. And unfortunately, the reference to him is that he's deceased, but it was nice that he was referenced. I'm going to butcher his name, Seth Fiacre. He gets mentioned in this book, and I believe he gets mentioned in other books. I really need to start keeping track of which characters are in which books, because there's these, auxiliary characters that just, Alex calls up, hey Lou, I need information on a boat and also on financial stuff. Hey, Mal, I what about that lawyer, And I need to keep track of which characters appear in which books. Okay, at the point in the book when Alex figures out who the villain is, before the author lets us in on it, Alex calls somebody and the phone rings 5 times, and then I think somebody picks up the phone and says hello, and then Alex hangs up. And I'm not sure of who that is. Who did he call? Apparently they were listed in the phone book with just like an initial and last name, and Alex calls them, and I want to say, but because the only thing that makes sense to me is that it was the famous psychologist or psychiatrist, and now I'm blanking on his name. I was going to say Lou Malnati. That's not his name. Did I have him in the notes? I don't have his name in the notes, but he's anyhow the famous psychologist or psychiatrist that is a fixture in the book. And I'm blanking on his name, and it's is it Lou something? I gotta look it up now. Just because I said Lou Malnati's, that's the only reason it's bothering me. It's not Lou Sherman, that's somebody else. It's him and his wife. Let's see if there's anything online. Cunningham Gabney. Lou Gabney, right? I can't find anything on the Google machine. We're just gonna... it's Gabney, right? It's Ursula Cunningham Gabney, right? Or am I mixing that up with a different book? Okay, well, the Google... Wait. Yeah, the Google machine. Leo Gabney. Okay, sorry for that diversion. Anyhow, that's the only thing that makes sense, is that he called, but then, like, why all the mystique about, like, he called, it's just L. Gabney in the book, and, yeah, I don't get it. And then he's this respected figure, so, why would he he'd either be unlisted or he'd have a significant listing. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. Somebody explain it to me. Okay. I really like Dutchie. I like Dutchie from the beginning, and at the beginning, Alex doesn't particularly love him, and I like him before Alex does, and before the reader is supposed to. I love his triumph at the end. I love the implication that he knew Gina was gay and didn't judge her. It never really made sense to me. It never really made sense to me that he would leave the family to be sick. I get that he was probably too prided to see them, for them to see him, die. I hate to be dark, but, that's what it is. But I would feel like that his pride in his job and knowing that he was needed and how much his leaving would hurt would overpower even his pride. And I wonder if in the end he went back to support Gina after Gina was found. I also don't understand why Dutchy killed McCloskey. He had no reason to believe McCloskey was responsible for Gina's death. So it doesn't really, I think that was just a device to bring Dutchy back. But I don't get it. Okay, the villain is the weak point of the book here. Gabney doesn't really work as the villain. He comes across weak and a bit of a wuss until the end, where he sounds crazy. And I get that, that's often the case with evil people, is that they're weak and they're using power and, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it just seems like one of those things where everything is one way and then twist and now it's a different way. Alex allegedly really looked up to them and then they met, and then Alex was indifferent to him when they met, and then he saw him as a villain before, the reader did. And so it just, it kind of seems like maybe that was... It was one of those things where everything else about the book is great, except for the ending where we find out who the villain is. And that's the case with a lot of Kellerman books. But it's a little thin. Okay, a lot of the characters in this book are gay or bi. Let's just see if I'm going to try to remember who all the characters are and which ones are and get a ratio, because it's really pretty impressive. Milo, yes. Alex, no. How am I doing this? I only have a system. I get it. Okay, so Milo. So we got Milo, Gina, Ramp, Todd Nyquist or something like that, Ursula, Eileen Wagner, Kathy Moriarty. Okay, I'm going with 7. I'm going with 7 gay characters. And the non-gay characters, we have Alex, we have Melissa, we have Dutchy, we have Madeline, we have Leo Gabney, we have Noelle, we have Noelle's mom, we have McCloskey. I'm sure there's more, but it's almost half and half. And for a book that came out in 91, that's amazing. That more than half the character, not more than half, but almost half the characters were gay or bi. That's really progressive and ahead of its time. Okay, so that's really all the notes I have for that one. I'm sorry that it's kind of scattered. It's because I finished reading this book over a week ago and moved on to the next book, but just haven't had a chance to film yet. So hopefully my notes made sense. If there's anything you want to discuss, put it in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you on the next book. Thanks for watching.